Disclosure is going to come out of Huntsville, Alabama, out of Redstone Arsenal. Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama is the biggest fucking deal that you've never heard of.
For the craft to start revealing themselves, that was something that had been approved. So the Project Paperclip scientists, and we know there were at least 1,500 of them, first, many of them ended up at Redstone Arsenal. This is a multinational effort to train as many competent pilots from around the world as possible to fly in these reverse engineered craft that are kind of like hybrid human and extraterrestrial technology.
Why did they move Space Force from Colorado Springs to Huntsville? I'm going to show you exactly why, and it's going to blow your mind. Come on, let's.
You're watching The Big Picture.
All right, we're going to join and react to a video that was just published by Clayton Morris from his show Redacted. Now, I don't agree with everything that he talks about on this program, but I do like it when he does a deep dive into this subject, revealing exactly why Space Force was moved from Colorado Springs to Huntsville. Let's look at this right here.
Well, where did all of those Nazi scientists go as part of Operation Paperclip when they were brought to the United States after World War II? Well, they were brought to the massive underground facility in Huntsville, Alabama, the Redstone Army Arsenal that was eventually called the Marshall Space Flight Center. So it's no coincidence that President Trump yesterday announced that Space Force would be moving 30,000 employees to Huntsville, Alabama.
We had a lot of competition for this, and Alabama's getting it, Huntsville in particular. So congratulations, everybody. Katie, congratulations.
Well, it makes sense, as this is home to the secret space program, reportedly one of the largest underground cities in America, in Huntsville, Alabama. Sources in the U.S.
One of the largest underground cities in North America. Wow. This is exactly why Huntsville has always been more than just Rocket City. It is a hub of secret knowledge brought over from World War II and the Nazis. You know, you connect that with Genesis 6 and you know what the Nazis were doing, if you're awake at all, what they were trying to tap into. And at the end of World War II, Project Paperclip brought over hundreds of Nazi developers, scientists, programmers, engineers. They came here, and guess what? Guess where they all went? Huntsville, Alabama. And none more famous than Wernher von Braun, who lived out his life until his death in Huntsville, Alabama. Let's continue.
The secret space program, reportedly one of the largest underground cities in America, in Huntsville, Alabama. Sources in the U.S. Air Force that I've spoken with directly have confirmed to me that these facilities exist, that they have been used since the 1950s for a secret spaceport. Two newspapers in the 1950s also confirmed that they were building this massive underground rocket facility. You can take a look at this. This was the dumb facility put in the side of the wall here. And this is what it looks like. You can see.
Wow.
And this goes back to the 1950s, underground site plan and requirements. Other eyewitnesses who worked in the secret space program say Huntsville, Alabama is home to a large spaceport used by Nordic extraterrestrials. Yes, ETs. And the Earth Alliance. I know this might be blowing some of your minds who are uninitiated or who are not familiar with this subject matter. This is BS. No, it's not. Alien craft, anti-gravity technologies, all being developed here in Huntsville, Alabama.
Yeah, this is crazy, and it just keeps getting crazier. You know, he talks about Nordic aliens, tall whites. You know, this is how the world explains supernatural beings and, you know, alien language. But Scripture tells us about principalities, fallen ones, different words, same entities. Okay, that's what we're talking about here. But it's very, very interesting. So let's continue here, because he's going to go deep into this, and he's going to bring in a guest that's going to blow your mind about Huntsville, Alabama. Let's go back.
Richard Eskridge was a NASA plasma fusion propulsion engineer who worked at this facility, co-founded Helion, by the way. His daughter, Amy Eskridge, finally blew the whistle on what she knew, and shortly after this interview, she died of suicide. She says disclosure around the UFO story will come out of Huntsville, Alabama. Listen.
All right, listen. She says disclosure. This big word we've been talking about. This lady, who's no longer with us now because she supposedly unalived herself, says the daughter of someone very connected in Huntsville, Alabama, to the space program, disclosure will come out of Huntsville, Alabama.
Listen.
Disclosure is going to come out of Huntsville, Alabama, out of Redstone Arsenal. Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama is the biggest fucking deal that you've never heard of. It's the biggest fucking deal that you have never heard of. Because the fact is that we have deep and wide, extensive credibility that no one knows about because you're not supposed to know about it. Because it's in Alabama, it's obscure. You're not supposed to know about it. That's the point.
People that don't know what Huntsville is. Amy
People
showed
know what Huntsville is? Is that what you're saying? People don't know what Huntsville is. Huntsville is the biggest fucking deal on the planet that you have never heard of. Now, like, Huntsville is the Silicon Valley of government national security technology and intelligence community technology and aerospace technology. Huntsville is like the hub. Like, we are number 3 on the first strike launch list. If first strike happens, 3 targets, Huntsville will be one of them. Alabama. Alabama. This is Alabama dude in the deep south. We're in the top 3 first strike. We're in the top 3 first strike because you haven't heard of us. That's why. It's on purpose. I started the Institute for one reason. One reason, the Institute. I started it as a public-facing persona to disclose anti-gravity technology through, because I told Mark this. If you stick your neck out in public, at least someone notices if your head gets chopped off. If you stick your neck out in private, fuck you. They will bury you. They will burn down your house while you're sleeping in your bed, and it won't even make the news.
Some people in the chat are saying, how did she find out? Or her dad, who worked there. That's how. Journalist Michael Schellenberger also entered this information into the congressional testimony record, by the way. She's not just some nut job out there. Congressional record that researchers found that Amy didn't kill herself, that in fact she was targeted with directed energy weapons by a private aerospace company and murdered for telling the truth about Huntsville. Needless to say, there's a lot of stuff happening in Huntsville, by the way. Talk to anyone in Huntsville about this, and they will tell you that, oh, yes, the rumors are 100% true, if they're honest with you. Dr. Mike Rosala.
So what do you think in the live chat so far? What do you think in the comment section about Huntsville, Alabama? That it's more than just that it was in my home state here, a place where it was connected to the original moon landing and the rockets. And, of course, we've all known that Wernher von Braun lived his life here. There's the place, the amphitheater, not the amphitheater, but the place where they have events here in Huntsville. Like Birmingham has a place called the Legacy Center. Up there it's called the Von Braun Center. I mean, he was very well known. So this young lady, who is the daughter of someone that worked there, is saying that it was very obvious to her and to her father that disclosure was going to come out of Huntsville, Alabama. And this, by the way, I'm going to link this down below, but you can watch the full interview with Redacted. This is a clip of a show that he just did recently as a result of the announcement that Space Force Command Center was moving from Colorado Springs to Huntsville, Alabama. And this is some pretty interesting things because basically they're saying there is a massive underground city, not just facility, but city. And his next guest is going to go on to explain that he supposedly knows that there are facts and whistleblowers that are saying that crafts are going in and out from underground through a specifically developed tube in the middle of this mountain that is close to the Tennessee line. And crafts are going up and down from this, and that there are thousands of people who are working underneath Huntsville, Alabama. Let's go back and pick back up where he's about to bring in his next guest.
Who writes at exopolitics.org. He's written multiple books on this. His sources on this, who've actually worked or have worked next to individuals who've worked in Huntsville, Alabama. Pretty remarkable information. And Dr. Sala and I have been texting about this story over the past 48 hours, and it's stunning. So just first at a high level, Doc, great to have you back on the show. Were you surprised at all that Trump made this announcement about Huntsville?
Well, not really, because during his first administration, he already had decided that Huntsville was the preferred location for U.S. Space Command. I mean, Space Force actually is headquartered at the Pentagon. So it's relocating Space Command, which is one of the 11 U.S. combined combatants from Peterson Space Force Base to Huntsville. And so the Biden administration reversed that decision. And at Huntsville, the new home for Space Command, you have a history where we know that there has been efforts to build a very large underground base there. That you mentioned those two newspaper records from the 1950s that announced that they were setting up really a kind of mini Pentagon. So this plan for building an underground facility there in Huntsville was set up initially as almost like a continuity of government, or at least as far as the Pentagon is concerned, so like a second home for the Pentagon. So we're talking about something that was quite massive. And you showed that diagram that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers put together for building a very large facility under a mountain. And you notice you've got a couple of entrances there, and you've got this kind of shaft in the middle for this underground facility that would be built under a mountain. So based on what I was told by someone who still maintains his anonymity, he just goes by the pseudonym JP, he's been twice to this facility, and he has identified two entrances and a shaft in the middle, which is used for these anti-gravity spacecraft.
So,
wow. Okay, so what are your thoughts so far? I mean, this literally is just an hour from my house right now, a little over an hour from my house. And this is crazy to me. And have you heard anything like this? Many of you have. You've heard this before. And I've heard rumors over the years as well, not to that extent, but that underneath this mountain, there is one of the largest underground facilities in America, military facilities in America. And Huntsville is deemed in the top secret world as the second Pentagon. The continuity of government, in case something was to happen, they're going to be able to go underground there in Huntsville, Alabama. But more than anything, this is where supposedly anti-gravity tech is being perfected, and it's been perfected for years. And of course, you go back to the Nazis, the Operation Paperclip brought them here, Wernher von Braun here. And the interesting thing is about Wernher von Braun, while he was there, there we had, not long after he arrived, we had the famous Roswell incident. And it is being said by several people in Huntsville, Alabama, that he was taken to the site before it was removed. So if it was a weather balloon, what is Wernher von Braun being flown from Huntsville, Alabama to Roswell? So we're going to go back into this and get a little bit deeper, because it gets even crazier, y'all. Let's go back in. Now he's going to talk about the Germans and Operation Paperclip. Let's go back.
Well, this is where the German Project Paperclip scientists came in, because when they came in, they were specialists not just in rocketry. I mean, the Germans developed V1, V2 rockets, but the Germans were also developing anti-gravity technologies using very high voltage electrostatic charges to create a kind of anti-gravity effect, and also studying torsion field physics where you would build the circular tubes that would be highly pressurized and at high temperatures. And if you circulate the plasma inside it at speeds of above 60,000 revolutions per minute, you again get an anti-gravity effect, but you also get a kind of time dilation effect. So these were craft that would not just be able to propel themselves through space, but they would also be able to travel through time. So you can imagine how useful that would be if you plan to travel long distances. So the Project Paperclip scientists, and we know there were at least 1,500 of them, first, many of them ended up at Redstone Arsenal, which was...
Think about that. 1,500 at least Nazi scientists who were developing all of these, who were very tied to the occult, channeling entities, dare I say fallen angel technology, being given access to things very similar, if not replicating what happened in Genesis chapter 6. The war's over. And then, of course, instead of putting him in prison, why in the world did the United States government and other governments, but mainly America, say, hey, we know what you did. We know what you was developing. We know what you were doing with all this demonic technology and all the horrible things that you did. But hey, we want some of that technology. So we're going to offer you your freedom, and we're going to pay you very well. We're going to take you to a place you probably never heard of, Huntsville, Alabama, to a place called Redstone Arsenal, and we need you to continue what you're doing.
Was then a portion of that was set aside for the Marshall Space Flight Center. And so the Marshall Space Flight Center was what was in charge of the Apollo program. And Werner von Braun was put in charge of the Marshall Space Flight Center, and under him were a lot of German scientists. But they, as I said, were not just specialists in rocketry. That was the public rationale for why they were there. But they were also there to share their expertise on how to reverse engineer these flying saucer technologies that had been recovered throughout US history, and some of them had been captured in Nazi Germany and brought to the United States. So the Germans were there to help US scientists study and reverse engineer those, and that's why you have some major companies such as Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, that Amy Eskridge was alluding to in her video, that they were there as well, because they are the organizations or the corporations that are building the reverse engineered spacecraft. So,
now, do you understand what this gentleman just said was that the main reason that Operation Paperclip happened wasn't necessarily really to go to the moon? That may have been, whatever you want to believe about that, a distraction from the real purpose, which was to reverse engineer and to continue their development of anti-gravity and the ability to go through dimensions that supposedly they were very close to being mastering during World War II before it came to an end. This gets even crazier. Remember, we're asking the question, what was the big deal? Why is the Space Center, Command Center, being moved from Colorado to Huntsville? It's a very, very big deal. Let's continue.
I've heard from members of the U.S. Air Force separately that there's this massive structure in Huntsville and some very strange things happening there. Can you talk about this, the Nordic extraterrestrial piece of this? I guess the tall whites, right? As they're well known among people in the secret space program. People have been in the U.S. Air Force, whistleblowers and others who've talked about this, eyewitnesses, U.S. Marines who've now been on the record talking about this. Can you talk about why they would be there in Huntsville specifically, and what are they doing there?
Well, for that, I can share one of the reports from my source, JP, who worked for the U.S. Army for 4 years. He was stationed out of Eglin Air Force Base, and one of his missions was he was taken twice to this underground facility in the northern regions of Alabama near the border of Tennessee. And later on, we were able to do some guesswork and identify it as Green Mountain right up there next to Huntsville. So he was taken into this underground facility, and he says he was taken with just over 30 pilots, international pilots.
Listen.
And they were from all over the world, Europe. And when he got there, he said that these pilots, they all left the vehicle that transported them. It was a bus, and they left and they went to a parked flying saucer, and each of these flying saucers had a Nordic, that's a human-looking extraterrestrial there, assigned to that craft, and they were training the pilots on how to use the technology in that craft. And the technology is this kind of brain technology interface. So it's quite advanced, but the important thing here is that JP identified that there were over 30 different nations involved in this. So this...
Okay. Over 30 different nations, according to this so-called whistleblower, part of the military, who has testified to this gentleman and to other people that he was taken inside this mountain near Huntsville on the border of Tennessee, saw a parked craft, supposed what they call alien craft, zero gravity technology, and over 30 nations were there to learn how to fly this thing. And they were being assisted by a Nordic alien. Well, you may check out when you hear this, what I'm about to say, because you obviously have your own opinion. You're welcome to your own opinion. This is very concerning. This is not just interesting. This is very concerning because this gentleman is detailing over 30 nations coming in agreement with what I believe are not interplanetary beings, but interdimensional beings, meaning fallen angels. This is what I wrote in my book about the final flood, about when Jesus said, as in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. I'll come back to that in just a second. Let's continue.
This is a multinational effort to train as many competent pilots from around the world as possible to fly in these reverse engineered craft that are kind of like hybrid human and extraterrestrial technology. And that this is something that is part of this, what is called the Earth Alliance, which is really setting up the foundations for what's going to be a kind of Star Trek future.
All right, that's why that's what got me, a Star Trek future. I just did a show. If you have not seen it yet, I'll link it down below. Go back and watch it, comparing the Star Trek logo to the Space Force logo. It's almost identical. I'm beginning to believe the Star Trek, Star Wars, Stargate, SG-1, I mean, fill in the blank, Deep Space Nine, all of them. Were predictive programming, trying to get us for the end times, for the final days. Did you hear them just say that these nations are part of the intergalactic agreement? That sounds like a movie. That supposedly there is a behind-the-scenes agreement going on between nations. Many of these nations are so-called enemies of each other, coming in agreement to be a part of an intergalactic alliance. What in the world?
So this ties into the Artemis Accords, why it is that so many nations are joining the United States or joining NASA under the Artemis Accords. There's about 54 nations now that are currently part of the Artemis Accords. And you ask, well, why are so many nations eager to enter into these bilateral accords with the United States that essentially create the Artemis Accords, which cements US leadership in space for decades to come? Why is that? Well, it's because underneath the Green Mountain, right next to Huntsville, in this deep underground military base, there is hundreds of these reverse engineered flying saucer craft.
I don't know if this is true or not, but this dude is saying, this is how big Huntsville, Alabama is. This man is saying that over 50 countries are coming into this Artemis Accord, basically submitting to the superiority, the power of America as the dominant force in space technology. And if you go back and watch when Donald Trump announced that we had established Space Force way back in 2019, when you go back and watch the video that I just made this week on Star Trek, it opens with him saying, this cements our power in space management, space movement. We are going to manage space, is what he's saying. Now you got this guy saying over 50 countries are coming into this Artemis Accord to give America the leadership role. What are they? What is this covenant going to be? This is a covenant with what they call aliens. What I call demonic and fallen angel technology. Sounds to me like this is a part of setting up of the end times, the beast system, where we're all going to come together and worship the image of the beast. And I think we're getting ready for disclosure. And remember, at the beginning of this program, they said disclosure is going to come out of Huntsville, Alabama. This thing is accelerating quickly.
That international pilots are being trained on, and that eventually you're going to have similar craft being relocated all over the world. And this will be part of a kind of like worldwide disclosure initiative.
Wow.
So when Amy Eskridge in that video says that disclosure will happen in Huntsville, and her dad, who knew about it well, then she ends up being, suicided after she admits this. What do you make of that? What do you make that what she said there? Now, this is congressional, this is entered in the congressional record thanks to journalist Michael Schellenberger. So what does she know about disclosure that will happen in Huntsville? Is that what she's talking about? Maybe this like larger sort of international plan?
Listen.
Well, that's exactly what my source JP was told, that there was a plan for the craft to start revealing themselves, that was something.
There was a plan for the craft to start revealing itself. I'm going to back that up and let you hear the whole thing. And then you're going to hear that supposedly some people in the Biden administration stopped it. But when you hear the interesting tie-in of Donald Trump and his uncle, it's crazy.
That had for the craft to start revealing themselves, that was something that had been approved. But at that time, clearly there was not consensus, and the Biden administration really, I think, was opposed to that. And so it didn't happen. The deep state kind of cut in and jumped in and kind of like prevented that from moving forward. So I think it was really just a matter of time before you have a new administration coming in that would be pro-disclosure. And Donald Trump is very much, I believe, someone who is pro-disclosure. And I think that goes back into his history from his uncle, John Trump, who was not just involved in studying Nikola Tesla's FBI papers, but John Trump was also very familiar with the kind of high voltage electrostatic physics that the German paperclip scientists were studying. Wow. And some of the recovered craft were taken to the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where John Trump was a full professor. So I think President Trump is very familiar with this history. And I think he is more than ready to move forward with this disclosure. And Huntsville would make a lot of sense because it's very easy for craft to start flying around. Locals are used to it. And also because of its proximity to the Marshall Space Flight Center, I think that would be something that the press would be very interested in. And it would kind of make a lot of sense.
All right, so what are your thoughts? I'm going to link the entire interview down below so you can go back and watch it for yourself, the entire clip. But I wanted to show you one more quick thing. This is another video that I will also link down below. This is an hour video. It's a documentary that came out March 9th, 2024, and it's called Alabama's Biggest Secret, Operation Paperclip. Very interesting discussion between the person who made the documentary and a local resident there that was raised by, and he's showing some old artifacts and papers that he had from his childhood, and from not just even his childhood, but his mom and dad's life and his grandfather who was a Nazi scientist that came over in Operation Paperclip. He talks about how their whole family were Masons, how he was a high-level Mason from a child. He was being raised to become a very influential person. And at the very end, they're standing outside of the Space Museum that here in Alabama, where I live, we're all familiar with. And they were looking at some of the rockets that were there. And he opens up his trunk and he starts showing some documents. And I just want to show you this, and I want to play it out and let you hear what he says about Wernher von Braun. Like I said, I will link the whole entire thing down below. Go back and investigate it, and then get in the comment section and tell me what you think about Huntsville, Alabama. Is the truth coming out that this is more than just being close to Redstone Arsenal that's above ground, that most people are familiar with, but that it is the largest underground city in America, and that they supposedly have multiple dozens and dozens of either downed craft, reverse engineered craft. But let's watch this. It's very interesting. This is the very end of this. And I want you to hear what he says about Wernher von Braun.
You often discussed what in the family?
Well, what exposure, if any, did NASA have to any instance of the possibility of like alien intelligence? And so it is documented in a particular publication, Dr. Wernher von Braun speaking to one of the astronauts, and I forgot which one, but he told him while smoking a cigarette outside one of the hotels in Cocoa Beach, Florida, that he said, "We know we're being monitored by an alien intelligence." That was Wernher von Braun. And another thing of note that was passed down is this is all verbal history.
Sure.
You know about the incident at Roswell, New Mexico.
This blows my mind. This guy's doing a documentary on Huntsville, and he's either playing or he's just oblivious. I can't believe that he really don't even know what Roswell is.
The crash.
It's foggy. Yes.
Yeah, and it was a big national security issue, and the Army's report on that was that it was a crashed weather balloon.
Mm-hmm.
If you look, and they had pieces of metal that couldn't be destroyed or broken, but it bent easy. It crumpled up, but it was indestructible.
Right.
And a large cleanup event and secured site. No one could go in. A lot of people disappeared later in life, and this and that. So. You still see it on television. It's being addressed all the time. It's the original alien crash theory. And so it was relayed to me verbally through the descendants of the team members. Okay, if that was just a weather balloon crash, then why was Dr. Wernher von Braun immediately secreted away to that crash site? Why would he have to be there to look at a weather balloon? What was it? Exactly. And that's verbal knowledge. Because amongst their social group of the first generation descendants of the German team, that's discussed, amongst them.
Huntsville, Alabama, the new home of the Space Force Command Center, and we're learning more and more and more about why the move really happened. And when you go into watch this clip, you'll hear him talk about Donald Trump's uncle, who was a part of the gathering of the documents when the apartment of Nikola Tesla was seized. And that Sandy and I have discussed many times privately that there's no way that Donald Trump as a child did not have conversations with his uncle and even his father, in the conversations that his father would have had with his father's brother, which is his uncle, of course. Discussions of what was found. And Nikola Tesla has said in his autobiography that much of what he did, he got from downloads from some kind of entity from another dimension. It is being hypothesized that in Huntsville, Alabama, there are aliens underground, there's alien crafts underground, there is the ability from within that mountain to transport individuals across dimensions. Is that true? I don't know. Let me know what you think about this. Are we getting ready to have the major disclosure that we talk a lot about on this channel? My answer to that is I believe we are. I believe this is just acceleration of disclosure. And how interesting that someone who's no longer with us because unalived herself publicly said disclosure will begin in Huntsville, Alabama. Well, tell you what else is going to be a part of it. Alabama's going to be a part of the end time revival, because we're going to preach the truth on this channel. We're going to tell you the big picture. The big picture is not what the government is telling you, because the government's never going to tell you the truth. The big picture is there is a spirit realm, and there are fallen angels, and the days of Noah have returned. And on this channel, we're going to continue to open your eyes to the truth. We ain't woke. We certainly are awake. Go to LarryRagland.com, get your free gift, become a partner with us, connect with us, subscribe to this channel if you're new to our channel. Help us grow the big picture. We love you. God bless.
Help us build the Big Picture family. We're on a mission to wake up the world to what is really going on. Go to LarryRagland.com to give a one-time gift or become a monthly partner. Any amount blesses the entire Big Picture family. While you're there, pick up our book, I See Greatness in You. Browse our merchandise store, connect on social media, and get on the Big Picture mailing list at LarryRagland.com. Join us and be a part of the Big Picture family, where we ain't woke, but we are certainly awake.
You're watching The Big Picture. You're watching The Big Picture. You're watching The Big Picture. You're watching The Big Picture.